Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, uh, welcome to my presentations. First of all, my name is Francis Marcino Malual, and so delighted to share with you a presentation about South Sudan problem and solutions. And in these presentations, uh, by the end of these presentations, you would be able to know the reason why South Sudan is a failing state. And second, what are the problems that hold South Sudan back? And third, the way forward and solution. So what should we do to rescue our country? So also in my presentation, I would talk a little bit about South Sudan background, so that those people who are not familiar with South Sudan can get a little bit of the history of South Sudan. Secondly, I will be having a case comparison of South Sudan versus Rwanda. And then I will conclude my presentation with the way forward according to the African National Party visions. So let us start with the South Sudan background. I'm aware that a lot of you are familiar with the history of South Sudan, and therefore I would not go into a detail about the history of South Sudan. So basically, I will start, we can start as early from the Sudan People Liberation Movement and Army, which was established in 1983 in Bielfarm under the leadership of Dr. John Garang Temebure, because this movement is very important to the problem that we are having right now in South Sudan. The South Sudan fought the War of Liberation from 1983 to 2005. So, and the SPLM and the National Congress Party, which is the NCP, the leading party by then, the leading party in Sudan, signed a comprehensive peace agreement in January 9, 2005 in Nairobi. So during the 21 years of liberation struggle, South Sudan has lost more than 2 million people. So after the peace agreement was signed in 2005, the leader of the SPLM and the SPLA arrived for the first time to Khartoum and was welcomed by so many crowded. Many people come to welcome the leader of the SPLM and the SPLA. However, in less than 3 weeks, the SPLM lost its visionary leader and founder in a tragic helicopter crash in New Side between the border of Sudan and South Sudan. So late Dr. John Garang Temebure was succeeded by his Deputy General Salva Kiir, who was sworn in as the first Vice President of the Republic of Sudan and President of Southern Sudan by then. So during that period, which is the interim period, was led by General Salva Kiir Mayardit, and then until the election in 2010, where he was elected as the president of Southern Sudan, which is the semi-autonomous government. And Really, the SPLM struggled tribally with the NCP to make the unity attractive, but unfortunately they failed. So in 2011, people of South Sudan overwhelmingly voted for independence of South Sudan. And by July 9, 2011, South Sudan became an independent state, and General Salva Kiir Mayardit was inaugurated as the first president of South Sudan. So that was a brief background of South Sudan. And now let us look a little bit into the Old Sudan. The Old Sudan is the current Sudan before the independence or before the split. So uh, Sudan was old in terms of the governing because they control all the resources of the country, leaving the majority of the population of Sudan under the dire poverty. So the majority of the Sudanese were marginalized by those who live in the center, which is in Khartoum. They were calling for Sudan to be an Arabic state and an Islamic state. And therefore, they were excluding the majority of the non-Muslim from sharing the power with them in Khartoum. So the mission of the SPLM was supposed to transform uh, to transform all Sudan into a new Sudan. And this is what did not happen. So this was supposed to be transformed into a new Sudan. However, this mission has failed, and therefore, by 2011, the whole Sudan was divided into two, all South Sudan and all North Sudan. The old South Sudan, which is the current South Sudan that we have, and then the old North Sudan maintain the name Sudan, so it's become the old Sudan. So the mission, because when the country is split, we have even the SPLM party has a split. So those in the north become SPLM North, and their mission was supposed to transform all North Sudan into the new North Sudan. And also their comrade in South Sudan was supposed to transform all Sudan also into a new Sudan. However, this mission all failed. So actually, South Sudan is still an old South Sudan because the SPLM party uh, actually reluctantly or they prefer to stay in all South Sudan because actually they are interested in controlling the wealth of the country. So these all South Sudan remain, which is the South Sudan that we have right now. So basically, the SPLM fought to attain the vision of New Sudan, and the New Sudan on the new basis where there is an equality, there is no difference between the Muslim and the Christian. All of them, they're equal. They are the citizen of the same country. It should be a justice. They were calling for a justice. And then we are calling for a, equal opportunity, and then the development of the marginalized area along with the whole South Sudan. So the prosperity for all Sudanese people. Then at the same time, actually, the SPLM was calling for separation of religion from state because actually the religions, when you call Sudan to be an Islamic state, that was excluding the the, the non-Muslim in participating in the government. And then they wanted to establish the democratic and pluralistic states, actually, because Sudan was run by only one political party. They need to end the marginalization and the rule of the elite. And this is what was resisted so much by the NCP. So second part of my presentation was the case of South Sudan versus Rwanda. And I have in this column a lot of factors or development factors that we are likely going to compare it between Rwanda and South Sudan. So the first factor that we are going to look at it is the area, the size in kilometer square. So Rwanda has a size of 26,388 kilometers square. So while South Sudan has 620,000 kilometers square. So when you compare the size of Rwanda and size of South Sudan, you get South Sudan is 23 times size of Rwanda. So South Sudan is very big compared to Rwanda. When we come into the population of of Rwanda, for example, is 12.2 million, while South Sudan is 12.58. So actually, there is no much difference between the population of South Sudan and population of Rwanda. When we come to population density, and the population density is we divide the population by the size of the country. So uh, we have in Rwanda almost uh, 230 inhabitants per kilometer square, while in South Sudan we have only two inhabitants. So that means 220 people per kilometer square. So South Sudan is a very vast country. In terms of the state, Rwanda has only five, and then South Sudan has 32 states. And this, by the way, the number of states is very huge. If you divide the population by the state, for example, you will get in every state roughly something like 350,000 population, and this population is very small. So for you, for this population is very small, and therefore they would not be able to sustain the development. They would not be able to get more revenue because revenue need more population. Another indicator is the life expectancy. For those countries that have a good economy, the life expectancy is they live longer, while people with a very bad economy, they live shorter. So actually the life expectancy in Rwanda is 65 years, while the life expectancy is only 56 for South Sudan. In terms of ethnic group, Rwanda has only three. South Sudan is a very diverse country. We have from 64 to 74 ethnic group. And this one actually is very good because when you look into the case of United States of America, is a very diverse country, but for them they manage to utilize the diversity of their country for the benefit of the whole country, and therefore we it's very good to be a diverse. Actually, it's not something that is bad. So we need to transform our diversity into an asset instead becoming a curse like the way that we have it right now where we have a polarized society. Education expenditure. This one is very important factor because most the more the government invests in education, the more is produced a high qualified and a labor. And this one actually does affect the economy of the country. So Rwanda invests almost 3.5% of its GDP in education, while South Sudan invests only 0.8% of its GDP in terms of education. So almost Rwanda investing 4 times its resources in education. And this is an indication that why Rwanda is going well actually. In terms of labor, the generating, the what creating job is 75% of the job are being created by agriculture, while only 11 in industry areas. So actually Rwanda is not an industry country, it's agriculture. And look at the size is very small. So 15% of the population actually, and the job is being created, and most of it is within the government and those petroleum company. So we need to create more jobs so that South Sudan can be able to make more money. In terms of the GDP, the Rwanda 9.13, while South Sudan is 2.8. So Rwanda becomes very richer than South Sudan, although we were richer than Rwanda before. So what are those manufacturing industry that Rwanda has? It's only simple thing like cement, like agriculture product, and a small scale beverage, soap, furniture, cigarette, textile. So these are all small manufacturer. These are not a big and complicated manufacturer or sophisticated manufacturer. So South Sudan could be able to do that when we have a good leaders. So the second things also, we only depend on a crude oil. So what does Rwanda export? Rwanda export tea, Rwanda export coffee, hide, gin, ore. So these are only the commodities, are all commodity at the same time. So actually, South Sudan export only crude oil. So the main exporter, they export, Rwanda export it product to UAE 38% and Kenya 15%, while South Sudan is only one commodity that they export to China. So when we come and compare the GDP per capita of Rwanda versus the one in South Sudan. So, for example, when we look into the GDP per capita of Rwanda, okay, of Rwanda in 2010, the GDP per capita of Rwanda was 536.4, while South Sudan GDP per capita was 3,789. So in 2009, South Sudan was much richer than Rwanda. But look what happened actually after just only 6 years. After 6 years, you will see that the GDP per capita of Rwanda has increased by almost 50%. So the GDP in 2016 was 738.8. That is the GDP, while South Sudan is 1,596. When you look into the GDP also, you see that the GDP has reduced, although our GDP is a little bit higher. But why South Sudan actually is not growing like the way Rwanda is growing? Each time the way that we manage our resources. And the funny enough also, when you look into South Sudan, this one was in 2010, where we were getting only 50% of the oil revenue. But when we become an independent and we have almost 100% of our oil, and we know that the South Sudan has got away of almost 75% of the oil revenue of Sudan. So our revenue was not supposed to go down. I was expecting that I think we're going well. Our revenue should be somewhere about 5,000 or even 6,000 or 7,000. The GDP should be 7 or in that area. And because we have a bad leadership, that is why our GDP is going down. So why South Sudan is not doing well? We look at the GDP, our GDP is still higher than Rwanda. It's all about bad leadership. We have a bad leadership. So this when you have a country which has a bad leadership, in fact, you will have a bad institution. So if you have an institution that is bad, you will see the corruption is very common there. So, and with the corruption is very common, you will see also the result is the failing state. So the bad leadership produce bad institution, and therefore the corruption will become the result. Therefore, that's why you see South Sudan is a poor and is a failing state. So the leadership factors is very important. So the leadership that we have, Rwanda have a good leadership, and then South Sudan has a bad leadership. So what is, for example, we have some factor here. The leadership that Rwanda has is a good leadership, while the leadership that we have is a bad leadership. So what is the difference when you have a bad leadership and somebody has a good leadership? The bad leadership, for example, the good leadership, like the one in Rwanda, they have a vision, they have a strategy plan, they have the capacity to implement the plan, they monitor and evaluate the plan, and therefore they will achieve results and they have an achievement. But when you have a bad leadership like the one that we have in South Sudan, like there is no vision, no strategy, there is no any clear plan. If they have a plan also, you will see that there is no they don't have the capacity to implement and monitor and evaluate the plan, and therefore you will see the result is zero. There is no any achievement at all. In terms of conflict, when you have a good leadership, they have the capacity to control conflict. And that's why you see in Rwanda, after the conflict, after the civil war in 1994, actually they control all the conflict. There is no any war anymore in Rwanda. That's why you see Rwanda is going well because of good leadership. But in South Sudan, there is no capacity to control the conflict because we have a bad leadership. So institution, when you come to the institution, the good leadership will be able to build a strong institution, and therefore we have Rwanda, they have a strong institution, and this strong institution actually can fight corruption, and therefore the government can make a lot of money. When you have a case of South Sudan where we have a bad leadership, we have a weak and fragile institution. So overall, when you have a good leadership, you will have a progress, while in a bad leadership, you will have a failing state. So no matter whether you have good resources or you don't have resources, the very important thing, if you have resources and you have bad leadership, you will not produce any progress. And the case is example of South Sudan. If you have a good leadership, even if you don't have a resources, we have seen the resources of Rwanda, you still can produce some progress. And that's why you see that Rwanda is progressing and South Sudan is not progressing. So because the time is running very fast and I want to wind up. So what is the way forward? The way forward, we need a good leadership. If you have a good leadership, the good leadership will be able to build a strong and good institution. The good institution will be able to fight corruption. If you fight corruption, then you will collect enough taxes, you will manage its revenue, the country, public money will not be embezzled by elite or a government official, no loss opportunity revenue, no insecurity, because actually the security organ will be trained well and equipped well, no clan-based employment. So these negatives will not be there, and the public and deny the public, because when you employ people based on your clan or your tribe, actually most of them they don't perform well. So without adequate tax collections, South Sudan would not be able to invest on the following. So security organ training and equipping, because all these need money, and money come from where? From taxation, from the revenue, from managing the revenue. Education also, you need to invest a lot of money in education. If you don't have, you will not be able to put money also in health. You will not be able to do construction. You will not be able to transport. So corruption is an enemy of development. And if we don't have a good leadership to fight corruption, South Sudan will not go anywhere. So what is the way forward? The way forward, we need to change the gear. South Sudan right now is moving backward with the current bad leadership. So we need to bring a new leadership which can change the gear, because the gear now is in reverse. We need to go forward. And for us to go forward, we need a democratic society where citizens will organize themselves in political party, and these political party will form the government, will go for election, the people voted and they form the government, and the government will do the development, provided that you have choose the right people in the right place and the good leadership. So how to build South Sudan? For us to build South Sudan, there is a very important 8 element that we need to focus. So important 8 element of building wealthy nation. You need to have a military and you have a law and order. Without military, you would not be able to protect your territory. Educations and flexible labor force. You need to fight corruption. You need to have a low tax rate around legislation and taxation. You need to have high-grade infrastructure and telecommunication. You need to have low corporate tax so that you can attract investors. You need to have fair and transparent market so that there is no corruption. You need to have a reliable enforce of contract between the for the government. So these are all very important things that you need to do for you to build a strong nation and to have a wealthy nation. So for us, in conclusion, that When you have a bad leadership, no matter how much resources that you have, the country will not go anywhere. And we have seen it right now in South Sudan. When you have a good leadership, so no matter how little resources that you have, you will not go anywhere. Like the case of Rwanda, we do not have so much. They don't have so much, but they invested a lot in education. They invested a lot on agriculture. So if we can grow like 10 times the size that Rwanda is growing right now, I think South Sudan would be able, to stand up. And even we may not need the oil money, because the oil money need to be preserved for be preserved for to be a reserve, and you save them for some other thing. So coming to my end, the conclusion is that we need a good leadership so that our country can move forward. We need a good leadership so that our country can move forward. Thank you so much. If you have any comment, please subscribe to my channel in the YouTube. And also, if you have any new thing, you could be able also to send your comment into our email, which is African National Party SSD@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and God bless South Sudan.